rather unlikely one. He grew up in Long Beach, California, and had a rougher upbringing than most. Conviction, he was mostly known for a successful skateboarding career spanning multiple decades, before going through a very public yet mysterious mental breakdown that ultimately led to his current position. Up until a couple of years ago, Terry Kennedy, commonly known as TK for short, was highly regarded by the majority of the skateboarding community, and now, the sentiment around him ranges from general disappointment to complete disgust. There's been a lot of speculation regarding the details of his story, as well as the people surrounding him, and the management he had in place that could have potentially led to such an unfortunate outcome. The question is, how does someone with such a strong legacy and career spiral so quickly? And what causes such a rapid downturn in the first place? This is a look into the life and career of Terry Kennedy. The origin of Terry Kennedy's skate career is a rather unlikely one. He grew up in Long Beach, California, and had a rougher upbringing than most. As with many residents in the Long Beach area back then, much of his family was surrounded by or directly involved in gang activity. Because of his background, TK was almost destined to follow the same path himself, had it not been for a simple chance encounter. By a fortunate stroke of luck, when Terry was a kid, he happened to notice a few other kids skating at a nearby park. Intrigued by it, he went over and started talking to them, which eventually led to one of the kids giving Terry a full board and even a pair of skate shoes. From that point on, TK's life trajectory would change. See, skateboarding isn't exactly the most common thing for kids to do in the hood, and this was especially true back then. But for Terry, it was an outlet he enjoyed that kept him away from the gang activity going on around him. TK was hooked on it, and even though a lot of his neighbors thought it was corny, he found a good group of friends he could skate with that, for the most part,
damn, TK was a shit though, man.
He was still surrounded by gang activity, even getting shot in the face and arm at a party early on in his career. But he pushed through all of the negativity because he knew skateboarding was a better route. As a black kid in the hood skating, he faced a lot of backlash from the people in his neighborhood, which is something he's mentioned in several of his interviews throughout the years.
You ain't gonna be doing that white boy shit. You gonna be gangbanging like us, or you gonna be selling drugs? If not, well, you know, we're gonna torture you about it. And like I said, I had to deal with getting shot, I had to deal with fighting everybody in the neighborhood. I remember I used to have to hide my skateboard every day I used to come home from school, because if I didn't, I had to fight with all the kids in the neighborhood.
Terry was fortunate in the fact that a couple of the kids he was skating with were very good skill-wise and were well connected in the skateboarding industry. Spending so much time skating with them helped him progress at a much faster rate than normal, and it also helped him build industry connections much easier as well. After just a few months of skating, Terry was already hanging out with the founders of Baker Skateboards, which was a somewhat new company back then, but has since gone on to be amongst the largest brands in skateboarding.
Fuck yeah.
A brand new skater hanging out with pros regularly is not a common occurrence, so this was an amazing opportunity for him. Growing up surrounded by pros allowed Terry to start skating at a high level in a very short amount of time, leading him to eventually turn pro himself after just a few years of skating. He didn't necessarily have the best skating, but he had a great personality and stood out among other pros in the skate industry simply because of his character.
He wasn't bad though. He had good
This is something you
style.
can still see in old comments, with one reading, "Maybe he's not the best skater, but he's hilarious. He's an entertainer who can also skate a little." Being an extremely energetic guy with a crazy sense of humor, he won over a lot of other skaters, especially due to the way it was portrayed. See, Terry Kennedy was first introduced to the public through the original Baker videos, which were absolutely massive videos back then
Fuck
that have
yeah,
since
the
become known
best.
as classics in the skateboarding world. These videos were filled with hijinks and random moments the Baker team had while out skating, and they were some of the first videos that really captured the personality of the skaters being shown. As one of the first black skaters, Terry Kennedy was a beacon and a role model for a ton of skateboarders, and due to his marketability, it didn't take long for him to spread into other ventures as well. Soon after his professional skate career started taking off, he began appearing in TV shows. He was featured in music videos for popular rappers, and he even got his own show on BET. Terry was on a hot streak that few pro skaters could relate to. It's hard to know the exact numbers, but it's safe to say he was earning well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And as someone who came from such humble beginnings, he made sure the world knew it. TK was among the first skaters to really flaunt wealth, showing off the rims of his car, the jewelry he wore, and the houses he bought for himself and his family.
Damn.
When you Baker, that's what you get.
This was all a part of his image though, which in some ways helped him grow even more. The flashy lifestyle is something he's talked about openly. He He had a list of amazing sponsors, he was highly regarded throughout the skateboarding community, and he managed to diversify into other avenues of media, which is something many pro skaters struggle with. Terry's career had reached the level that exceeds the expectations of the majority of skateboarders.
Yeah, bro, he's
but
a
like most
badass.
things, it wouldn't
Fuck.
last forever. By the time TK really started taking off, he was in his mid to late 20s, which is towards the latter half of a skateboarding career's expectancy. Now, although skate careers don't have a specific cutoff age, anything past 30 tends to be considered kind of old. This isn't always a definitive rule though, and there are plenty of prolific skateboarders who continue to push themselves well into their 30s and beyond. The thing is, that wasn't the approach TK was taking. Although he was pursuing several ventures throughout his career, his skating itself had seemingly stalled. The variety of tricks he was doing, as well as his overall skill level, were beginning to stagnate, and cracks were beginning to show. A couple of his other projects had done alright, but skateboarding was still the main driver of everything else. By focusing on so many different hustles, he let his skate career slip, and once the other ventures fell through, it would eventually catch up with him. It's widely known that a great way to
This
differentiate
loud ass
yourself in
PlayStation.
skateboarding is
PlayStation.
with
This
your
loud ass
personality.
GameCube in the
Two
background.
skaters can do the exact same trick, but if one person has a more appealing character, their efforts can go much further in the industry. This concept is what really helped build up Terry Kennedy's career. He was never the best skater on the team, but he had a very dynamic personality that appealed to people. In a lot of footage, he would be loud and eccentric, which can be seen in many of the earlier skate videos he was featured in.
It ain't hard, it's the hustle.
When he talked to someone in person though, especially as he got older, he could also be very calm, kind, and soft-spoken, and overall, he was pretty well-rounded. This side of him was shown much more in his interviews.
I would nenever turn my back on the straight skate industry. Never, 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 never. And I will always embed everything in skateboarding because that's what, allowed me to have a family now.
Skaters didn't care if TK skating wasn't as great as other pros, because it was his personality that captivated them. The problem is, personality can only take you so far. While other skaters in his generation were continuing to progress, putting out more and more skate videos and competing in contests, Terry never
They're
kept
going
up.
hard.
He was one of the fastest people to ever become a professional skateboarder, but after his first few years, his skating seemed to taper off. Terry was rarely putting out footage. He never skated in contests, and he started to disappear from the scene entirely. Although career slowing down a little is normal with older skateboarders, for TK, this was something he didn't handle very well, and it was the start of a much darker path. When you look back on footage, Terry Kennedy always had hints of sporadic behavior that would appear from time to time. In many of his earlier antics, it was mostly chalked up to young guys simply having fun. As he got older though, things began to get more serious. One of the first public displays of this was when he abruptly quit the Baker team for a day over a seemingly minor issue. Although it was quickly fixed and he was back on the team right away, it was surprising that he would leave the team he'd been with for over a decade just to rejoin a day later. When asked about it, he seemed level-headed. Good explanation or not though, many people saw it as a red flag, and rightfully so. About 2 years after the first incident, Terry abruptly quit Baker again, posting a video on Instagram that had since been deleted where he seemingly called out certain members of the company. Shortly after, he released a skate video with a new board company that ultimately had mixed reviews. Some skaters still enjoyed it simply because they were fans of TK, but others pointed out that the level of skating wasn't very impressive for a professional, with one comment saying, "This part would have been okay 10 plus years ago," and another one reading, "Nice to see he hasn't learned anything new in the past 13 years. The sudden departure from Baker and subsequent release of his less than impressive video part under a new and mostly unknown company were both early signs of the unraveling
Damn.
that was beginning. This is the time period where things really started to get odd. Terry Kennedy had successfully made it out of the hood at an early age, but would occasionally have moments where it would try to pull him back in. For the most part, TK had matured past that life, and would even talk about how he's a family man with a wife and kids. Somewhere down the line though, things began to change. For whatever reason,
real.
one day, Terry randomly started posting weird rants on social media, calling out various gangs.
I told you, stop playing. Y'all talking, we dropping. Parliament, let's go.
It was unclear why exactly he was posting them, or who specifically they were directed to, but seeing an older pro skater with a family making those videos was alarming, to say the least. This concern was pointed out in a comment saying, "I don't know if anyone is paying attention to Terry's Instagram, but it really seems like the man needs help. No one seems to be helping him or even talking about
For
it.
real.
Something is definitely not right."
Fuck, I need
The
some
skate
breathing
community
today.
had no idea what was going on behind the scenes with his family or the gangs he was calling out. All that was known were bits and pieces that skaters would tell each other about random encounters they had with TK.
I'm like, yo, blessings, like, yo, appreciate what you did for like being like a black skater. And he was like, blessings, I love you, bro. Like, and it was just so tweakerish. Like,
Yeah, it was
I
like-
didn't
Like he was
interact
on
with so many
drugs?
tweakers in my life, bro.
Yeah, you
like,
kind of know that energy.
I was
huh?
just like,
He was sweating
damn.
and not moving, huh?
Rumors began to circulate that he was suffering from CTE, which seems plausible for a veteran skateboarder, while others speculated that he was actually struggling with drug addiction, which is almost just as likely. Regardless of what was causing it, it was clear that Terry was becoming unhinged. A lot is unknown about what exactly went on during this period, but it seemed like there were people taking advantage of TK. At some point, he separated from his family and cut off many of his friends, and stories were surfacing that a new manager was manipulating him, using a psychotic breakdown as an opportunity to help himself. There were clearly some major issues going on behind the scenes, but as bad as things already were, they were about to get even worse. While out visiting his new girlfriend near Chicago, Terry Kennedy met a 23-year-old skater named Josiah Casahan. Josiah is described as being an amazing friend who's always focused on positivity. He was well known in the local skate scene and was an easygoing person to get along with. Josiah grew up as a fan of Terry, so when Josiah saw him out skating one day, he went up to talk to him, quickly sparking a friendship. For the remainder of
Okay,
TK's
just
trip,
making sure it
the
pops
two
up on
hung
the
out
screen.
frequently, spending a lot of time skating together. The night before Terry was set to return to LA, they allegedly even partied together at the hotel he was staying at. Early the next morning, however, Terry began having another one of his episodes, and that's when things took a turn for the worst. Apparently, Terry's girlfriend had originally agreed to give him a ride to the airport, but since she had been drinking, she suggested that they call an Uber instead. This quickly prompted a heated argument between the two in the middle of the hotel parking lot. When Josiah tried to calm Terry down and de-escalate the situation, Terry allegedly punched Josiah in the face, leading him to fall to the ground and hit his head on the concrete. There's some speculation that Terry then kicked Josiah while he was on the ground, before taking his girlfriend's car and driving away, leaving her in the parking lot with Josiah unconscious and bleeding. After paramedics arrived, Josiah was taken to the nearby hospital, where he unfortunately passed